Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. And today, I wanted to have a little bit of a discussion about this man right here.
Volodymyr Zelensky.
Volodymyr Zelensky.
Volodymyr Zelensky.
Volodymyr Zelensky.
Volodymyr Zelensky.
All right, that's in case anyone ever says I pronounce his first name wrong, which to this day I really have no idea how to pronounce, and quite frankly, it doesn't really matter. So, is this man getting a manufactured image? What do I mean by that? Well, the first day of the war, I think it was safe to say that wearing said attire, you know, the blue shirt, the blue short sleeve shirt, or the long sleeve shirt, in this case, is perfectly acceptable. You're getting bombed, and the only thing you can throw on is this shirt. I get it. Totally understand it. Perfectly reasonable. Now, let's fast forward a year to where we're at today. And here we go again, Mr.
Volodymyr Zelensky.
Volodymyr Zelensky.
Volodymyr Zelensky.
Volodymyr Zelensky.
Volodymyr Zelensky.
Is meeting with various European leaders. And yep, he is still sporting the dark green or the light green short sleeve shirt. Now, why is that? Why is he's been in Europe for the past few weeks now. I don't know if anyone knows that or not. And in just the last day, he popped up at Johns Hopkins here in the United States. So he's going all over the place. Now, the question is, why is that as well? So besides the question about the attire, which is just really causing some issues within the European community, I hear the European leaders at this point really want him to wear something different. But again, he chooses to wear his Batman outfit. It's not a Batman outfit. No, I guess you're right. It's not a Batman outfit. But anyway, again, it's causing a bit of a wrinkle. Now, did he show up at Johns Hopkins in the short sleeve shirt? Does anyone know that? I don't have a picture of him at Johns Hopkins. Did he attend the graduation of the Naval Academy recently, as well? Did Zelensky show up there? We don't know. Okay, I don't know either. But he's all over the place. We've spotted him in the Middle East. We've spotted him here in the United States. We've spotted him in Europe. In this picture, it looks like he was informed that he would be meeting Bald and Bankrupt in Fallujah. And apparently, that was not the case. He actually was showing up in Europe and I guess decided not to shave because he did not end up in Fallujah after all. But here he is in Europe meeting with various European leaders. And again, he's not been in the Ukraine for some time now. He hasn't. And then there's the question is why is that? Is he concerned about being in Ukraine at this point, especially after the attack on the Kremlin? Could Russian forces have him targeted? And that's the reason why he is no longer in Ukraine. But he hasn't been in Ukraine for a few weeks now. And again, all over kind of the place. But again, just the whole attire thing. Again, I think it's that manufactured image, the narrative that we're seeing in this conflict, and they're trying to create a narrative around Zelensky. Again, as I talked about before, it's almost like in terms of the president of Ukraine, it was like they went out and they hired an actor who had previously played the president of Ukraine, and then they made him the president of Ukraine. That would never happen, would it? What? He did play president. He was what? I'm sorry. I'm the voice and I'm talking to reason. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, he did play the president of Ukraine as well. Interesting. All right, back to the meat and potatoes of the program, which is the actual war that is taking place. So we are hearing more and more information now that the possibility of this large-scale Ukrainian counterattack is now back on the table. That because of the changing weather, because of the drying out of terrain, that the Ukrainians maybe have unpaused the pause button and may be looking to launch a renewed large-scale counteroffensive against Russian forces. Now, where is this going to take place? We keep hearing that the Ukrainians are preparing for an attack within the vicinity of Orikhiv, south of Orikhiv, with designs on taking this town first, right here, Tokmak. And we're going to go over to the deployment map. I think this is a little bit better in seeing the force dispositions of Ukrainian forces. Obviously, this area here and here, this displays the buildup of Ukrainian forces that have been being refitted with Western equipment and could be used in this so-called large-scale counterattack. Now, is the Ukrainian counteroffensive going to be in this area? If they have Western advisors, especially U.S. colonels, generals, assisting them in the planning of this operation, which without a doubt they do, I would imagine that for the most part, this large-scale counteroffensive by Ukrainian forces, if it happens, is being planned at the Pentagon, most likely. And that could be a reason that we have seen Mr. Zelensky in Washington, D.C. recently, within the last day. He could be, as we speak, in the Pentagon, meeting with high-ranking U.S. military officials, discussing the possibility of this operation. Now, if this is a U.S. operation based on past U.S. military operations, they may be telegraphing an attack here in Zaporizhzhia. Okay? They may want the Russians to believe that's where they're going. Now, I would say this. You have to look at other areas as well. You have to look at recent operations that took place near Belgorod. A Ukrainian unit crossed into Belgorod Oblast and conducted a limited operation in this area. Were they testing Russian ability to defend the areas near Belgorod? It would not surprise me at all if we were to see a large-scale offensive operation in the direction of Belgorod or some other direction. Now, what would be the reason for that? What would be the reason to have 10 or 12 Ukrainian brigades make a drive towards Belgorod and try to seize the Russian city of Belgorod? Well, if they did that, they could then try to negotiate with the Russians to make the Russians pull out of Ukraine. Now, are they going to do that? We don't know. But I wouldn't rule it out. Especially how much they are telegraphing what they're preparing in Zaporizhzhia. Go back to U.S. operations, the first Gulf War in Kuwait. Most people, again, were expecting that the U.S. would launch a large-scale amphibious landing on the beaches of Kuwait with U.S. Marines. That was all but certain in the lead up to the kickoff of the first Gulf War. Obviously, that didn't happen. Very, very high-risk operation doing amphibious operations. That's why I don't think we'll see a Chinese invasion of Taiwan be successful. I think we'll see more of a blockade of Taiwan rather than an all-out amphibious invasion. Too tough to do. Even just in the modern era, in terms of seeing what the Russians were doing in Ukraine, just with river crossings and anticipated amphibious operations, was very, very difficult for the Russians because the United States was supplying intelligence information directly to the Ukrainians, and the United States could see exactly what the Russians were preparing to do, and were feeding that information to the Ukrainians, which made it very difficult for the Russians to conduct river crossing operations, and basically made amphibious operations for the Russians an impossibility in this ongoing conflict. But again, I would say that, again, given just how much telegraphing is occurring, I have to suspect, are they looking at doing something else? Are they looking at Belgorod? Are they looking at a possible operation near Chernihiv? Are they looking at an operation in the direction of Belarus? And I've talked about this before. What would happen if there was an all-out invasion of Belarus by Ukrainian forces with the intent of toppling the government in Minsk? What would happen then? And would that create an environment where the Russians would have to reassess its ability to continue operations in Ukraine, in the areas that it controlled? Because then they would have to make a decision. What are we going to defend? Are we going to defend Belgorod? Are we going to defend Bryansk? Are we going to defend Belarus? Difficult to say. But again, while unlikely we are to see a Ukrainian invasion of Belarus, we are probably also unlikely to see a Ukrainian invasion of Russian territory in Belgorod. I wouldn't take it off the table entirely. Again, it is not past the United States to conduct these types of operations, these very high-risk, high-reward operations. Now, obviously, the Russians just tried that at the beginning of this conflict. They tried it in Kiev, and they tried to take Kiev way too quickly. Again, I just don't believe the Russians were prepared for the amount of resistance that the Ukrainians put up against the Russians. Compounding that, I again have to suspect that maybe the Russians believed that the level of resistance as they tried to enter Kiev was not going to be the amount that the actual Ukrainians provided. And again, just based on third-party conversations from Russian troops, some of these Russian troops didn't even realize or had fully understood what they were doing when they actually entered Ukraine. I mean, we know that has been stated, and that's not a good way to conduct war when your soldiers not entirely understand what their mission is. Now, that's not to say that every Russian soldier that entered Ukraine believed that, but we do know that some were under that kind of impression, that they weren't aware that they were conducting a military operation until they started getting shot at. It's unfortunate. But again, looks like this Ukrainian counteroffensive is back on the table. There's a lot of chatter discussing that it may be, in fact, imminent, that we could see this take place within the next few days or a week to 2 weeks out. And again, very interesting that Zelensky is very close to the Pentagon right now. Very interesting to see that. And again, it looks like there also may be some concern about his safety, especially after the attack on the Kremlin, which we now believe was a Ukrainian operation. So, again, as we watch this conflict and we hear about the operation that took place southwest of Belgorod, the Ukrainians automatically say, well, it wasn't us. Wasn't us. Well, yeah, it is the Ukrainians. Any hostile operation against Russia, against Russian forces, essentially anywhere within the theater of the conflict, it's the Ukrainians, or possibly the nation states that are assisting Ukraine as well. But they're definitely not non-governmental organizations attacking Russia. It's just not. These are governmental entities that are involved in this. But renewed watch for this Ukrainian counteroffensive. We will continue to watch. We will continue to report. Thank you for joining us today. More to come very, very soon. Have a good day.